Hello, my name is Tom Wilson. I'm a priest over at All Saints Episcopal Church here at Southern Shores, North Carolina. This is the reflection and poem for the 14th Sunday after Pentecost. That's proper 19. The lessons are Exodus 14:19 through 31, Psalm 114, Romans 14, 1 through 12, and Matthew 18 through 21 through 35. And I call this one the old man walking through the water. The old man, whose name was Moses, meant pulling out of the water, felt like he was really living into his name as he was walking through where the water used to be. The water was standing like a wall on either side of him, almost 50 feet high. The ground beneath his feet was hard and solid. He thought it would be soft and sandy, so as when the tide goes out, but this was like pavement. He was alarmed and wondered what would happen if Pharaoh's army of chariots caught up to that long line of people following him, who were carrying all of their possessions on their backs and in makeshift carts as they left Egypt. Pharaoh had lost face in the battle with the old man's God, and while he had given permission for the Hebrews to leave, he had to reassert his authority and wring some sort of revenge on the former slaves. Pharaoh knew that many of the former slaves did not really want to leave, for it is human nature to want to stay in whatever condition you are, rather than risk an unknown future. Maybe, Pharaoh thought, if he could just kill the ringleaders of the slave revolt, he could force the rest of the slaves back into bondage. Moses knew that most of the people walking the path out of Egypt did not really want to go. Yes, they'd been miserable in Egypt, grunting and sweating under a weary life. But there's always a difference between complaining and changing. They were afraid that if they changed, they would have to give up much of what defined them. So Moses looked up at that wall of water. He got his name from being pulled out of the water, and here he was again. He imagined remembering what it was like being a baby, picked up out of that watertight basket. Had he been comfortable in that basket with the feel of that familiar blanket which held the comforting smell of his mother? Had he cried when the hands with the smell unlike his mother brought him out into the fresh air? He looked at the water wall again and imagined remembering what it was like for the baby he had been to have gone through that first wall of water as he had been born. Had he been comfortable in the womb and not wanting to leave? Had he cried when his body had been so rudely interrupted from what he had known for 9 months? Had he complained about the assault on his body as he squeezed through the opening into a new kind of life? Had he been startled by noise and light and having to learn a whole new way of breathing and getting nutrition? Had he complained that he had not been asked to be born as the water gushed out and he was pulled from that water? He had not asked to be born, but he was learning how to treasure every moment after. Moses looked again at the wall of water and saw the monsters of the deep peering out through the clear water. He had been a man of the desert so long that he had never been face to face with such curious creatures like sharks and whales. He looked in the eyes of the whale and saw that they looked back at him with curiosity. Moses instinctively put his hand into the wall in order to touch this creature, and the whale pulled back. The whale had been afraid of him. Imagine that, he thought. Here the whale is scores bigger than me, and yet the whale is the one afraid. Is it part of being a created being that we share the curse of fear? The old man thought, maybe the reason the animals recoil in fear has to do with the fact that they sense the violence in the humans, and they run away from what they do not understand. Animals understand the food chain as part of existence, but they do not understand senseless violence. The old man knew that humans are part of the same creation of which the whale is a part. All of the creatures of God share curiosity. But is there something about humans where violence is always under the surface? The old man still had his hand in the wall of water, and he realized he was touching the depth of the sea with his hand, and the depth of his being with his soul. He had killed a man years before, and when he had run away from prosecution for that crime, he'd used violence to defend the daughters of the priest of Midian from the shepherds at the well. The priest had been so thankful for the violence used in the protection of his daughters that he gave one of his daughters, Zipporah, to Moses as his wife. She later called him bridegroom of blood. In the struggle for power against Pharaoh, Moses had excused the violence of the death of the firstborn of the Egyptians as a recompense for the centuries of violence done to the Hebrew children. So when did the violence end? He thought, the violence will only end when there is a trust that all is being redeemed. Trust is hard. As I look at these walls of water, can I trust that the walls of water will not break and drown me? I walk one step at a time, but these walls seem so threatening that my fear that I will not be able to hold up these walls threatens to break through. I can put my hand through the walls, and I know that I cannot hold them up. These walls are being held up by my relationship with the one who is greater than myself. It is the ground of my being that holds the wall, and it is my trust in him or her that allows me to walk one step at a time by the walls that can engulf me. Moses thought, going through the water is really important as a symbol of going through the birth trauma, of leaving a whole way of thinking and living behind and finding a new way of life on the other side of the water after it breaks. Maybe when the walls of water break and come tumbling down, drowning the past, then I might have a life without fear in my heart. One step with trust is followed by another step in trust, for the journey to the promised land is only reached one step at a time. And the point is not the destination, but the journey, which I know will take all of my life. And the old man chuckled. I know that it is only a matter of time before Pharaoh's chariots and chariot drivers will catch up to us. But Pharaoh trusts only in himself, and trusting only in oneself does not keep the walls of water from flooding our lives. If that's the case, then the high horse and its rider will be tossed into the sea. So, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put together, craft a poem based on that particular story that I just wrote. And I call this poem, The Old Man Walking Through the Water. And basically it's 8 lines or 8 phrases that I use over 16 lines in different order. The old man walking through the water. Pulling out of the water, standing like a wall on either side, carrying their heavy burdens, differing between complaining and changing. Standing like a wall on either side, imagining, remembering what it was like, differing between complaining and changing, having not been asked to be born, imagining, remembering what it was like, creatures of God sharing curiosity, having not asked to be born, horse and rider tossed into the sea, creatures of God sharing curiosity, carrying their heavy burdens, horse and rider tossed into the sea, pulling out of the water. Thank you. God bless.